Yo guys, what's going on? I'm Tim for the Real Sports Talk. You can hit me up on Twitter at CashKelly_TRC, and that would be Cash with a K. Big news out of the NFL today. If you haven't heard, I really don't know where you've been because you're not a real NFL fan. If you haven't heard this by now, Peyton Manning is set to go sign a 5-year, $95 million contract to join the Denver Broncos. This has numerous ramifications on the entire face of the NFL. Who is viewed as a Super Bowl contender, where other quarterbacks are going to go, including guys like Alex Smith, Tim Tebow. I will get to that later on in this video, but first of all, I do want to respond to some questions that I've received in my inbox about this signing. First of all, did he pick the right team? It's tough because everyone knows that the best team on paper, if Peyton Manning goes there, was to go play for the San Francisco 49ers. But I heard, that they were only willing to offer him a 4-year deal, and maybe Peyton wants the security of that 5th year. I don't know exactly how much guaranteed money they would have included. I don't know we don't know how much Denver's going to be guaranteeing to him either, so that part of the contract isn't really out there. And I think that no matter what contract he signs, if he doesn't play, then he's not getting the guaranteed money. So it's a weird type of guaranteed money. If he doesn't play well, but he's still out there, then he's going to get the guaranteed money. But most guys just want the guaranteed money because if they get injured, well, then they have that to fall back on. It's not that case for Peyton Manning. That was kind of one of the risks he was going to have to take in signing with one of these teams. Now, in terms of why he didn't go to the 49ers and why I think that it was probably a smart move not to go to the 49ers was because Harbaugh was a backup quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys when Troy Aikman was there, and he likes to have control of that offense. And everyone knows that one of the conditions Peyton Manning needed was control of the offense. And I think that Harbaugh has that team headed in the right direction, and maybe bringing in Peyton Manning might have looked well on paper, but I just don't think that those two, I'm not saying egos in a negative way, but just because that they've done a ton to earn the right to control the offense, both of them, I don't think that those two egos would have been able to work well together. If you talk about Tennessee, I really cannot find too many negatives because defensively, I guess Denver's a little bit better, but I think we saw the holes for Denver that their defense is not nearly as good as some of the elite defenses. We saw that when Tom Brady completely shredded them. We saw that when Brian Dawkins, who still hasn't made his mind up about whether he's coming back for next season. Now, I would expect after hearing this that he will come back. We saw when he was out for the playoffs that defense was not quite able to have the same success. So, I just don't know exactly why Peyton Manning would have thought that Denver was overall a better team because you don't have Chris Johnson in Denver either. And if you really think about the last time Peyton Manning had a good running back was Edgerrin James. Those were some of the best seasons of his career because he had to keep the defense honest. Joseph Addai had one good season, and really since then he has not had any other options. So you know that 85% of the time Peyton Manning is going to throw the ball. Now he's still so good that he can get away with doing that, but having that option, especially as you get older and maybe some of your skills decline, having that option would have been a nice thing to fall back on, and Peyton Manning's probably not going to have that in Denver, at least not immediately, because Denver really does not have a star running back the way that Chris Johnson is. And the other reason I think that Tennessee would have been, I really do believe that Tennessee was the best fit. He could have had a chance to be an owner after he played and buy the team. Offensive line. We saw how badly Denver's offensive line played against New England. New England had a terrible defense for a majority of the season. I think it was like 30th in the NFL. And their defensive line, besides Vince Wilfork, they really did not have any other guy on that defensive line that's much of a factor. They completely shredded the Broncos' offensive line to the point where Tim Tebow, one of the few things that he is really good at, is running out of the pocket. He couldn't even get out of the pocket. In Peyton Manning's, to have the neck injuries and have that potential that you're going to go down there and have that type of offensive line playing in front of you, I don't think that that's smart. Also, not only does Denver not have a great one, but Tennessee is a pretty nice one. We just saw them add Steve Hutchinson. That, to me, was a situation that made the most sense. That being said, he's not going to go there, so I don't think he picked the right team, but overall, I'm not making a decision, and he might know some things that we do not know. Unfortunately for him, he took too long to make this decision, so the chances of bringing Pierre Garçon, gone. He went to the Redskins. The chances of bringing Reggie Wayne, gone. He re-upped with the Colts. The chance of bringing Vincent Jackson. I guess Mike Wallace is still a possibility because Denver doesn't necessarily need a first-round pick. And, they might not get... I don't think they're getting a first-round pick for Tim Tebow, but I think some team will value him high enough as a second-round pick for some reason. I don't know. I guess that the problem with going to Denver is you don't have a ton of time to get other weapons there. In Tennessee, you have Kenny Britt if he could come back healthy, and I'll take Kenny Britt over Demaryius Thomas. I think Demaryius Thomas will have a breakout season. Do not get me wrong here. I think that he massively underachieved with some of the quarterbacks there because he just did not have the right guy throwing him the ball. But I think that Kenny Britt is a better overall receiver and would have done better with Peyton Manning than what Demaryius Thomas is going to do. Now, they do have the chance to either go do something like sign Mike Wallace, forfeit that first-round pick, or they could go and draft another wide receiver in the first round or maybe the second round, whatever the case may be. Maybe you even look at a guy like a Plaxico Burress, but there is not another elite wide receiver out there anymore, so that is kind of one of the drawbacks of going to Denver is you're going to have to work with what you have. Guys like Eric Decker is going to have to be one of your top receivers, and that's kind of just going to have to be the way it is. A lot of people I've heard, Tebow fans, let's be honest, you can be a fan of the guy. I'm not a Tim Tebow fan. I don't hate the guy. I just hate all the buzz around him because I don't think that it's fair. I think that it took away from guys like Andy Dalton who really deserved the buzz. But to not think that Peyton Manning is a better overall quarterback than Tim Tebow is absolutely idiotic. To think that Peyton Manning, one of the top 5 quarterbacks to ever step on one of these fields, and Tim Tebow, with all due respect, really cannot throw the ball very well. To think that you wouldn't take Peyton Manning over Tim Tebow if he's healthy is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard anyone say. And to think that Denver would give him a 5-year, $95 million deal if he wasn't healthy, if they didn't know that he was going to be able to go out there and play the game, you really think they would have given him a 5-year, $95 million deal? They watched this guy work out. I know that there were rumors that his arm had become a vegetable, but we saw the workouts at Duke. And obviously, John Elway saw him play, and they saw what he did. So, to think that or the Tebow fans or anyone making the excuse that Peyton Manning shouldn't be taken over Tim Tebow because of health reasons, that's a bogus excuse because we know that if Denver's going to do this much, give him this much money, well then obviously they know that his health is in a pretty decent situation or they wouldn't have done that. Let me get to the Tim Tebow aspect of this because I am going to do a video breaking down who I think is the best team for Tim Tebow to go down to, whether that's today or tomorrow, I really don't know. It depends how much time I get tonight. But, like I just said, Tim Tebow is one of the hardest quarterbacks to evaluate. I sat here, I gave you the truth. I felt that he was massively overrated. This all he does is win thing, and then he, lost in the second round of the playoffs, which he should have. The Denver team just clearly was not better than the New England Patriots. I'm not putting that on Tim Tebow. That was on more the offensive line and the entire team. The Broncos defense were just absolutely being shredded up. I did not blame Tim Tebow for that. But all he does is win. One thing that people got to realize with these type of... First of all, Tim Tebow is hype. I don't think that he's a better overall quarterback than what Kyle Orton was. The one thing that he did do well is because he wants to win so much, and this is one of the things that I like about Tim Tebow, is his drive. Because he wants to win so much, he has this drive that not only he wants to win, but it rubs off on the rest of his teammates. And that's a great thing. Brian Dawkins, a veteran who's been in this game for a long time, 37 years old, I believe, talked about that. And he talked about how he got pumped up. And if you... I got a front row seat here for years as an Eagles fan watching Brian Dawkins. If something else pumps him up besides just himself, then you're doing something right. So I'm not trying to draw back from Tim Tebow necessarily. I like that aspect. But the bottom line is that he's just not a good enough quarterback. If you cannot figure out by your second year in the NFL how to throw the ball really well, then you're probably not going to be successful. And he is a tremendous runner. I don't know why they didn't make him a running back. I really don't. Because if we see guys like Peyton Hill is so successful, Tim Tebow could run over some of these guys. He could play tight end. He could play linebacker. I mean, he's a great athlete. He just doesn't have a position. And quarterback will never be his position that he's going to excel at. And I know many of a bunch of comments from people, oh, he was 7-2 this season, blah, 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 blah. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks come into this league and make 9-game runs or even 5 or 6 game runs, and if you just evaluate off those, you'd think, oh, damn, this guy's a superstar quarterback if you just look at the record. Does Jason Campbell a few years ago when the Redskins, a couple times actually, when the Redskins started 6-2, is he a superstar? Was Kyle Orton when the Broncos started 6-0 the other year, is he a superstar in this league? Just think about that. Is Chad Pennington, because he had one nice season, or he had one nice season with the Jets, they still moved on from him for a better, older quarterback. And he had one nice season with the Dolphins, but they still moved on from him. I mean, overall, you take the guy who's done it for a longer period of time at a better level, and that you think is going to give your team a better chance to win. And Peyton Manning completely changes this team. He makes the Broncos a Super Bowl contender. And with all due respect to Tim Tebow, they were not a Super Bowl contender when Tim Tebow was there. I know that everyone loves to rally around this guy. And I don't mind it because I like the drive. I want to like Tim Tebow. But it's just people overhype him so much, it draws back from the ability to do that. When I see people saying, oh, Tim Tebow's he's in the MVP race, he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. The guy's throwing 8 passes a game. He's not one of the top 5. You're telling me you would take Tim Tebow over a guy like Drew Brees? A guy that let me not even go that route, because you guys know that Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning was out there, Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning. You know that those guys are clearly the upper echelon of quarterbacks in this game right now. But you're telling me honestly that you don't think that you have a better chance to win a Super Bowl with a guy like Joe Flacco than Tim Tebow? But yet Joe Flacco gets all the hate. And a lot of it is deserved because he kind of hasn't ever stepped up in that big moment. And the same even goes for Matt Ryan, except he hasn't gotten the criticism yet. And that will probably be next year's target for the media. You're telling me honestly that you don't think you have a better chance to win? Tim Tebow is going to bring a lot of hype to your team, and I don't even think that he purposely does that. Tim Tebow, I feel almost bad that I ripped the guy because I understand how much he wants to win, and I admire that. I like to see players that want to win that much. But in the end, this is the NFL. The best of the best. And Tim Tebow, long term, was not going to be one of the best of the best. If the NFL can figure out an elusive runner the way they figured out Michael Vick in Atlanta, who overall, I mean, Michael Vick, he was a better runner because he's more elusive. He's not as big, so he might not be able to barrel through you, and he might get more injuries. But he was a more elusive runner. And Michael Vick was always criticized because all he could do was throw the deep ball. Tim Tebow had a real tough time doing much but that last year. And he had a real tough time throwing a lot of those deep balls too. But no one criticized Tim Tebow for that because he's all religious and everything. And I get that. I don't get liking a guy because he's religious. I don't get that part. But I get that you like Tim Tebow and you want him to do good. But I don't get people that can't separate their rooting interests from just realizing how good someone actually is. And it's like that. This is a tough thing to do. To sit here and pick against my teams all the time, it's not something I want to do. And people tell me all the time, oh, you're so negative to your teams, you're not a real fan. If you ever see me at one of these games, I'm a real fan. It has nothing to do with that. It's about on these shows, it's about separating that. When you're talking about sports, if you really want to be taken seriously, it's about being real. And if I'm being real with myself, I know that Peyton Manning is one of the top 5 quarterbacks that's ever played this game, and a 4-time MVP, and the last time that he ever played in a game, or the last season he ever played, my bad, he threw 33 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. The interceptions was one of the highest he had in his career. I think they'll do better in Denver than he did the other year because he has a better overall team. Now, not by a ton, but I think he does have a better overall team than he had here with the Colts. Maybe not as good a wide receiver, but the defense. Oh my God, the one year that Peyton Manning in his career really had a really nice defense was the year that they won the Super Bowl. That was the year that Bob Sanders, I believe, won Defensive Player of the Year. You always had Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis, but Gary Brackett had a huge year. If you give him guys like Von Miller, Elvis Dumervil, the way that, what's his face, sucked with the Eagles, the defensive tackle played last year, I can't think of his name, and he's a free agent, so I don't know if he's going back there. But Broderick Bunkley, there we go. The way that he played last season, if you can give him that type of defense, he can make it work. Now, I still do think the Titans are a better option. I'm not trying to get off topic there, but I think that he can make that work. Tim Tebow he wasn't going to be good enough to win a Super Bowl. And all these people say, oh, it's only his first year, he's going to become a better passer. You're getting out of Tim Tebow what you're going to get out of Tim Tebow. If John Elway, one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play in this game, cannot figure out how to make this guy throw the ball the correct way and with a spiral, my God, half the time he didn't even throw with a spiral. If he can't figure out how to do that, then I have a real tough time thinking anyone else is ever going to do that. And maybe the Broncos decide to, keep Tim Tebow as a backup. I really doubt this because it would just be a huge distraction. And it is unfortunate to Tim Tebow. And another question I want to address is people have asked me, do I think that Tim Tebow is getting screwed? I've seen a lot of people make videos about this. I've seen it talked about on TV. In a way, I kind of do, because he kind of captured that city and got all the momentum about it. But when players change teams, what do they always say? It's a business. This isn't high school sports. This isn't, middle school football. This is the NFL. And John Elway, as one of the GMs or whatever his title is in that front office, essentially the GM, what his job is to do is to put the team in the best position to win a Super Bowl. So while it kind of might be unfair to Tim Tebow didn't show you enough last year to commit to you as your long-term quarterback. I agreed with Elway not doing that. And unfortunately, those words that you said with, I think Tim's earned the right to come into training camp as the starting quarterback. Well, that doesn't look like it's going to happen next year. But I think that Tim Tebow somewhat did get screwed, but it's a business. And John Elway's trying to win a championship. That John Elway wants to win. You can tell that. And he's finally found the right head coach to do that. I believe that he has found that in John Fox. A guy that is a defensive genius, really, a lot of times. And now he essentially has a genius offensive coordinator. I mean, Peyton Manning is the offensive coordinator for that team. Point blank right now. He's the offensive coordinator for that team. I believe they've got the guy from the Steelers. To do that, I think, puts the Broncos in a nice position. And unfortunately, it does kind of screw Tim Tebow. But in the end, real Broncos fans, not the ones that hopped on the Tebow bandwagon, real Broncos fans are going to sit down and realize it's about winning a championship. And, I mean, this is a nice problem to have. Let's say I'm a Broncos fan, because I'm an Eagles fan. I don't have to worry about this problem. But the Broncos fans are saying, no, we haven't won a championship since, like 97, I think it is. We are in a better position now than we were yesterday to do that. And, you know what, in the end, that's what it's about. It's about winning. And while I might like Tim Tebow, I'm just speaking hypothetically as a fan here of the Broncos, Peyton Manning gives me a better chance to do this. Unfortunately, it's kind of a situation here with Tim Tebow where you just kind of have to say, you know what, Tim, you're a hard worker, you did everything right, but you're just not good enough to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and we found the guy that we think can do that. I hate to put it that way, but if you look at the guys who win the Super Bowls, they're not the rushing quarterbacks. And I think that might change because I think that there's kind of a new breed coming up with these guys that can throw, have a huge body, a huge frame, can run, and they can throw. That's the one thing Tim Tebow's lacking is the throwing part, because he's got the huge body and he can run really well. But you see these guys like Cam Newton coming up and RG3, and maybe they'll change it. But right now, the guys who win the Super Bowls are the pocket quarterbacks. Think about all the Super Bowls that have been run over the past so many years. You got Eli Manning, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. What do all those guys have in common? That they are pocket quarterbacks. That wins rings. And unfortunately, Tim Tebow is never going to be that. And he's going to bring a lot of hype and a lot of excitement to whatever organization he goes to, because I am convinced he's not going to be back in Denver. He's going to bring all that to an organization and a lot of fight. And I like that out of Tim Tebow, but I think Peyton Manning brings a lot of that too. He just doesn't make it as public. The Broncos fans, if you are a hardcore Broncos fan and you're upset about this, man, I hate to tell you, you got to really sit down and think about things, because you're getting one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time and you're sad. Come on, man.